Hey, Diana, did you know that financial wealth and freedom are easier than you think?
Mark, that's the dumbest thing you've ever said.
Ladies and gentlemen, jurists and just curious, welcome to the Successful Barrister podcast. Here you'll learn about marketing, management, and life skills for lawyers that probably won't get you disbarred. Hosted by Marc Whitehead, a seasoned lawyer who remembers when fax machines were cutting edge, and Diana Berry, attorney, COO, and the brains behind the scenes. Together, they are the legal world's most dynamic duo since statutes met regulations. So if you're looking to build a practice, not a prison, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Successful Barrister, where legal legends are made.
And welcome to the Successful Barrister podcast, a podcast for lawyers about marketing management and life skills that probably won't get you disbarred. I am your host, Marc Whitehead, here alongside my co-host, my right hand, my COO, Diana Berry. Hey, Diana, how you doing?
I'm good. I'm really excited, Mark. We are finally doing a non-marketing podcast.
Okay, I know, but just pretend it's marketing just for the ratings purposes. But we are not talking about marketing today. We are talking
Exclusively,
about financial wealth and freedom for lawyers and how to go about building those things.
We're going to use the framework from a book, but it's not going to be a book report.
No book reports today.
But you're going to use the framework from which book?
From the Cashflow Quadrant, Rich Dad's Guide to Financial Freedom by Robert Kiyosaki and Sharon Lechter, who I don't know who in the world Sharon Lechter is, but I think a lot of people know who Robert Kiyosaki is.
Mm-hmm. Have you read this book?
I have read this book. I read the predecessor to this book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, which I think is the one that most people know. Mm-hmm. Now, Robert Kiyosaki is an interesting character out there because he started off writing sort of financial self-help books. And lately, he's developed into sort of a financial doomsday town crier type person, I think he's, quite frankly, this is my opinion, so you can't sue me over this. He's kind of become a sensationalist.
Okay.
What I would call a financial sensationalist. He's always making big, bold predictions, of which I don't know if anybody else actually holds his feet to the fire. And of course, all of these things sell: his podcast, his newsletter, and all of these things. But the Cashflow Quadrant was written, I think, decades ago, back when he was a little bit more what I would call a more middle-of-the-road serious author. And it was a book that really spoke to me because it really broke down the way people can build financial wealth in general. Of course, it's not targeted to lawyers, but of course, we're going to take it and reinterpret it today in terms of, how lawyers can think about this, lawyers, law firm owners. But it applies to everybody. I mean, this was written for the masses, and it's basically a concept. The Cashflow Quadrant is a concept of there are basically four places in the financial world where most people, or how most people make money. In other words, to build financial wealth. And none of them are necessarily wrong, but they each have their advantages and their disadvantages. And quite frankly, if you really want to build significant wealth, you have to move up sort of the linear chain to get there. Our very first episode of this podcast, we talked about the great lawyer mentality. And that was sort of a progression. You begin your career as, my success is going to be defined as being a great lawyer. And then, some people stay there, but some people make the jump to the next level, which is I'm going to basically become a great business owner, manager of a practice. And then some people even make the leap past that, and I'm going to become a great entrepreneur. And at each level, your situation changes. The variables that matter to you change. And quite frankly, your potential income level, your potential wealth building capacity changes as you move up sort of that ladder. This is sort of the same concept, but in a more general way, as it applies to kind of how people move along the journey of being employed by others, to being self-employed, to becoming an owner of a business, to basically becoming an investor in many businesses. That's sort of the progressive chain that, progressive may not be the word, the linear chain that people can go down to building wealth. Let's take our buddy, our good friend, our fellow Texan Elon Musk as an example. Elon is an entrepreneur and he's an investor. He's in many different businesses. So he might be at what we would call the top of that chain, in sort of the investor model. But even Elon started off somewhere along the line as a W-2 employee, or maybe the equivalent of a W-2 employee, whatever that is. And he's from South Africa, right?
I believe so, yes, sir.
Okay, so whatever the equivalent of a W-2 is in South Africa, he started off there.
Yep. So I think that maybe we can step back a little bit and just kind of introduce the concept. So I read the book maybe a couple of decades ago, 15 years ago or something. Yeah. And so I read both books back to back, as many people have. But for those people who have not ever been introduced to Kiyosaki's work, he's basically approaching it. I'm going to do my big funnel.
I love your funnels. Do your funnels.
Do you?
Go check out the YouTube video. She's doing the funnel right now.
So what his basic premises in both of these books, Kiyosaki's is how you build true wealth, right? And so what I think that a lot of our listeners may be is they just ended up, hanging their own shingle. And so they ended up as great lawyers that just were not maybe good employees for other people, maybe.
Yeah.
So they ended up.
You're looking straight at me, aren't you?
Yes, sir. No, I mean, that wasn't
me.
meant to be a dig, but maybe it was.
One of the greatest things that ever happened to me was the fact that I'm a shitty employee.
Yeah, you're unhireable?
I am unhireable.
All right, well, as long as you know that about yourself, and that is how you kind of became. And so the quadrant, let's introduce the quadrant. We're going to go from what are we talking about today? How you build true wealth, because some people just ended up as accidental business owners. I'm assuming most of our listeners are, or maybe they're stuck in that employee quadrant. And so we're going to talk a lot about what Kiyosaki talks about is the cash flow quadrant. And so for those of you who are listening, which I listen to our podcast, I don't watch them, thankfully, because I can't, whatever. So our quadrant is we're going to start with the top left, which is going to be E, which stands for employee. And then we're going to go to our bottom left, which is the S, which stands for self-employed. And from there, you're going to go diagonal to the top right, which is the B for business owner. And then the bottom right is I for investor. So,
okay, people, you've got to go look at the YouTube video. This is just her little visuals with her hands going everywhere. It's just so funny.
Well, I'm so glad you think you're just so. I'm glad I'm humoring you.
You are humoring me. Yes.
But we're going E for employee, top left, and then we're going to go down to S for self-employed today, and then we're going to go to top right for business owner, and then bottom right to I for investor. And so we're going to talk a lot about how you move from each of these quadrants, and specifically how Marc did it, maybe, and will be doing it, and the challenges, pitfalls, and some of the good things that he learned and how he did it today. Right, Marc?
Right. And I can just imagine the people listening to this driving down the highway are just totally confused by that visual picture she just gave them.
All right. Well, if you can do better, sir, okay. I challenge you to do so.
Okay. I admire your attempt. I admire your attempt.
Thank you. And so, but what you're really trying to get to, as Kiyosaki argues, is that bottom right of I, an investor, where your money is just making money for you and you're basically not really doing anything. Is that fair?
Well, it doesn't mean you're not doing anything, but you're doing what you want to do.
Yep. Your money's working for you. Whereas
our good fellow Texan Elon, Elon he does what he wants to do. If he wants to go in and just totally screw up Twitter, he has the right to totally go and screw up Twitter or screw up the Social Security Administration, whatever he's trying to screw up today. Or he doesn't have to. So he has the total freedom to do whatever he wants to do.
Whereas where a lot of our listeners probably end up are on that far left side of the spectrum, where you're at the top left as an E, which is that W-2 or employee or whatever equivalent there is in whatever country you're in, or the bottom left of an S, where this is the self-employed where you're just a business owner.
Okay, so let's break this down real quickly. Okay. How did we start out? How do practically everybody in the world starts out? We start out as an employee. I'm just going to refer to us as a W-2 employee, okay?
Top left.
Top left. So I started out my young career when I was 15 years old as a ranch hand, as a getting sweaty, getting ticks, getting bit by bugs, clearing fence rows, stepping on cow poop kind of guy. I was a W-2 employee. And I went from that W-2 job to working at Mud Island in Memphis at a W-2 job for $3.35 an hour. Most of you people have actually the minimum wage is what today?
In Texas?
Yes.
It's a little embarrassing.
It is kind of
$7.
embarrassingly low,
$7.
but nobody actually worked for that I know of. But yes, the minimum wage when I was 18 years old, $3.35 an hour. So I used to do all this for $3.35 an hour. Moving on through my career, did the same thing. Worked when I was in college, worked at God knows wherever the hell, the multiple 5,000 jobs I worked at that I sucked at. Go to law school, working as a clerk for other firms, get out of law school, go to work, for another law firm. I'm a W-2 employee. I basically trade my time for money. And this is where the vast majority of people are. It's our economic system, it's our social construct, is that people come to work in exchange for the fruits of their labor and their wisdom and their mind and their skills and their talent in exchange for a sum of money, basically a W-2 employee. This is where 90, 95, 99% of everybody in America is at, I would assume.
I couldn't give you that statistic.
Yeah, who knows? Somebody Google it. I don't know. The point is, as lawyers, we can move to a different business model, a different economic system, which the next one, and this is what a lot of lawyers do, they go hang out their own shingle and they become the S in this model. They become self-employed. The problem in my case when I was self-employed is I had the world's worst boss. My boss sucked, because I was my boss. And I probably, treated myself very badly.
So no comments on whether you are as a boss
I should have filed a complaint in HR against myself, except I was HR as well. So I start off as being self-employed, okay? But then over time, you start hiring people. You start substituting out, your efforts for other people. You hire other people, hired a paralegal, I started hiring other lawyers. I became a business owner.
And so today we're going to talk about the shift from that employee to self-employed to now you're a business owner, and maybe even what your next steps are to become an investor.
Now, this is the interesting part for lawyers. Okay. I'm getting the high sign that we're supposed to take a break, but I got to get the fourth one in here so we can set the premise for stage 2. Investing. Now, we obviously can invest in other businesses. I know a lot of lawyers who own bars. For some reason, every lawyer out there that has any sort of entrepreneurial spirit wants to go own a bar. So do I. I want an Irish bar.
I wasn't going to say that.
That's fine. Can you invest in other law firms? This is an interesting question. So I'm a partner in 2 different law firms. I'm a partner in this firm. I'm also what's called a Class B partner in the Sokoloff law firm. Now, that's a very low-level partnership. But it is possible that you can be partners in more than one law firm. In other words, you can have an ownership interest in more than one law firm. I find it interesting now with all these ABSs out there, these alternative business structures coming out of Arizona, coming out of Utah, where you can now actually partner with non-lawyers. Non-lawyer ownership of law firms. I know several people, both lawyers and non-lawyers, who have ownership interests in these ABS law firms out of Arizona. I know it's been discussed here in Texas. I don't know if it's ever going to happen in Texas, but I know it's been discussed. But that would seem to be the next level of sort of entrepreneurship, sort of the investor level within the law firm industry itself. So Still think that's off in the future a little bit, but we'll touch on it a little bit. So with that, I've been told we need to take our quick break. And then when we come back, we're kind of going to get in the meat of all of this. How to build wealth.
This podcast is sponsored by Marc Whitehead and Associates, a national disability benefits law firm. Marc Whitehead runs a firm of over 60 dedicated people whose mission is to make a difference in the lives of our injured and disabled clients. Marc represents disabled claimants in Social Security disability, private disability insurance, and veterans disability claims in all 50 states. Marc Whitehead is double board certified in both Social Security disability law and personal injury trial law. Marc has litigated disability cases in over 40 states and counting and can help your clients too. Stop throwing your phone calls away. Call Marc Whitehead at 701-VIP-LEAD. That's 701-VIP-LEAD. Or visit our website at disabilitydenials.com. Referral fees are paid in all jurisdictions where it is permitted. Refer us your disability cases today and know that your clients will be in good hands.
Okay, so we've been talking about the cash flow quadrant, and I wanted to kind of break down kind of in terms of maybe advantages, disadvantages, and kind of how they apply in the law firm sense for the lawyers out there who are listening to this. And the first one is the E quadrant that we were talking about early, which basically is an attorney that's employed by a firm, which is where a lot of us started out. It's where I started out. You know, your typical W-2 associate. You come out of law school, you find some law firm, you lie to them and convince them they should hire you because you're going to be great. You know, they know you're lying. They know they're going to probably weed out 80% of you within the first year or two. We know how this game goes. Mm-hmm. We know how this game goes. But this is where a lot of us started out, you know, getting that paycheck. And it's, you know, obviously it's a great thing. You go, you work for another law firm, you get a little bit of experience, you understand, you know, I'll start to understand how the legal profession works. And there's a lot of value to that. I mean, there's security in being employed by, you know, a law firm. We have lawyers here that have been here for how long? Over
11, 12 years?
11, 12 years, you know.
Anthony spent his entire career with us.
Anthony's been his entire career. Brittany's been here for most of her career. Selena's been here for most of her, if not all of her career.
Legal career.
Yeah, but the general economic proposition is that they're willing to trade their time for money.
Well, the job security that you're talking about is that you don't have to worry about your paycheck will get deposited in a bank account. You will have benefits that when you go to the doctor. You do not have to worry about whether payroll is going to be funded or whether or not there are going to be any cases in the door. You literally just come up, you show up and you do your job.
Right.
I think that's really the trade-off.
Right. You have security, you have predictable income, you have predictable benefits.
But I think it's job security, right? Like when I say security, I mean, you're still susceptible to, you know, layoffs, particularly if you have mass tort lawyers. We know that those just come and go in waves sometimes. And then we've also seen just law firms just decide to break up. So there's for the most part that security that every 2 weeks there will be a paycheck in your bank account.
Right. You know, and interesting work. You know, we provide a steady flow to our lawyers. There's always something to do. There's always great cases to work. There's always great clients to work with. So, you know, I remember the upside to it is you always have somebody there for you. You know, we have a team. Like, you know, we've been doing this for 33 years. And I'm going to say one plug for us. In 33 years, I've never laid off anybody for economic reasons. Now, I've terminated people that needed to be terminated. Never laid off anybody for an economic reason. So we had a very stable relationship with our workforce. But the ability to be around other people who you can bounce things off of, who you can sort of socialize with, you can meet get a cup of coffee with. There's a huge benefit for that, because I remember when I first started off as a self-employed person, you know, I was by myself. I didn't have anybody. I had to call people. I had to get on the phone and figure out, you know, we didn't have listservs. We didn't have any of this stuff. I had to get on the phone and call people that were not physically near me. So there's a lot of benefit. That's part of the security side of the advantage of being, you know, an employee. And most people will be an employee for most of their life. And that's great. The only downside is that your potential to be Elon Musk is pretty limited when you're, an employee of somebody else. You can make really good money, but you're never going to make Elon type money doing that. You've got to, sometimes take out and take a risk. And that leads us into the S quadrant, which is the self-employed lawyer. And this is what happened to me. I stepped out. I took the chance and I said, I'm going to hang out my own shingle all by myself. I had no employees, nothing. The only advantage I had is I had a very small little inheritance. I had about $100,000, which I had inherited from my aunt and uncle. And I appreciate that. They were lovely people. But it gave me sort of the impetus, the opportunity. Back then, $100,000 would float me for about a year, including business expenses and all of this fun stuff. So I figured I had a year before I had to make a profit. So I said, fine, I'm going to hang out a shingle. I'm going to become a self-employed lawyer. I'm going to have the worst boss in the world. And that literally lasted for about 6 months. And I realized I can't do this by myself. This sucks. I'm doing everything. I'm trying to figure out how to use the postage machine. I'm trying to figure out, how to send certified mail. I knew some things about how to file cases with the court because I had worked in law school, so I knew some things about the clerical stuff, but a lot of things I just didn't know, which meant I needed to hire somebody. And I made that first hire. Well, guess what? You now are no longer a self-employed person. You are a business owner. It may be a very small business, but you are a business owner.
I kind of disagree, unsurprisingly.
Okay, so I sort of get the point that you have to be at a certain level. Technically, I guess when I made my first hire, still self-employed. So here's the question. How many employees do I have to switch over from being self-employed to being a business owner?
I would argue that it's more of a mindset thing, and it's the platform upon which you have set up for the business, then the systems. How crucial are you, the business owner, to the income of the business? And then that's when I would say you would transition to a business owner. I think that, especially talking to a lot of people through Atticus and Pilma, that even firms of the size of up to 10 people, they just stay firmly on the left side of our quadrant as self-employed lawyers because they can't make that shift of becoming a business owner. That is, you got to let go. I think that that's one of the biggest things of shifting, of letting go of some things and trusting the team that you have built, hopefully that you have built, to do the things that you used to do on your own.
That's an extremely smart answer.
Well, that's why you hired me.
I know. I was going to say, do you want a job? Would you like a job? Because that was really smart.
Well, thank you.
Okay, so you parsed out something there that I think I intuitively knew, but I didn't articulate very well. You're right. So the way you phrase it, you're still a self-employed person as long as the revenue depends on your labor.
Absolutely. As long as you are still the guy, as long as you are,
okay.
I mean, we go back to some of the stories we've told on this podcast. If you are still literally signing every check mark or reviewing, what did you used to say? You used to review every settlement. Every
closing statement.
Every closing statement. And then you would sign every check. Then you're still you're a self-employed lawyer. And there is nothing wrong with that. No. Absolutely not. But I do think that if you're trying to get to that true wealth that we discussed, in our opening question, it is, you will have to become a business owner and create scalable systems. But it is absolutely a mindset shift. And I think that those are the things we've talked about, but maybe you want to reiterate some of the things specifically that you had to let go of that were probably hard for you, other than, looking at every closing statement.
So when you're self-employed, you basically, when you're working for yourself, you don't own a business, you own a job. And I think that may be the real distinction there. So you own a job. And you have a high degree of control, but the problem is when you just own a job, you really have no way to scale that.
Yeah, it's almost the worst of the quadrants in one way that you are...
Oh, I agree. It's totally the worst of the quadrants.
Because you have you have other people you're paying payroll to, plus you're still running your job. So you're essentially running a business, plus you have another job, which is to produce the income. So it's two full-time jobs. But that is where a lot of, I talk to a lot of,
A lot of lawyers stay right there, and they never leave that particular niche. So here are the downsides to it. You are really vulnerable to life. Life has a lot of things that happen to you. You have vacations, all right? You're not making any money when you're on vacation. And, you have illnesses. You're not producing any revenue when you're ill. You have, you're subject to different types of economic downturns. The legislature, with a stroke of a pen, could legislate out your area of practice. That has happened to me back when I was much smaller. You are vulnerable to a lot of things because everything depends on you. Unless you're bulletproof, and the last I checked, none of us are bulletproof, life happens. I gave this example, I think, last podcast.
It's episode 47.
Is it episode 47? See, you remember the episode numbers. I would have no clue what episode number we are on right now.
Well, I just listened to it.
Okay.
But we were just talking about how we had an Attic cousin or someone you met at Atticus who, was getting up in years, and then you become very vulnerable to life.
You get very vulnerable to life when you get older. But even when you're younger, I had to miss 8 weeks of work when my first daughter was born, and we had a medical emergency there that kept me up in Dallas for 8 weeks with a child in the neonatal unit up there. So this kind of stuff happens. So when you are a self-employed person, it may be great in one sense, but you just have to recognize how vulnerable you are. Now, a lot of people put together quasi partnerships or loose associations or office sharing arrangements that can mitigate some of that risk. And I know a lot of people, what I would call self-employed lawyers out there who do that. They will office share, they have a buddy system like, hey, if I'm gone, then this guy's going to handle my phone calls while I'm gone, and vice versa. So there are ways to mitigate that risk, but it is a big issue. The biggest issue is you can't scale, so you're really limiting your income potential. You're limiting your wealth building potential. That's kind of what I see as the biggest downside besides the risk involved.
Well, it absolutely creates that prison that we talk about in our intro there. I think that, like I said, it's two full-time jobs. So I'd go back to, if you find yourself there, listeners, go ahead and, just take out some of those tools, the delegate and elevate tool, the time tracker tools that we talk about, because I think that that's going to help you find the Eisenhower matrix. It's going to help you find the low-hanging fruit on some tasks that you absolutely need to delegate, whether that's to outsourcing, which we just talked about in a recent podcast, or whether that's finding an assistant. I've seen many law firms the size of maybe 10 that are just really strong wealth. They're very wealthy firms, but they're smaller firms, but it's because the business owner isn't in the mix of things. The business owner, and, I'm thinking about some Attic cousins who, they do take how many days are we supposed to take off?
It's like 175 days a year off.
And Atticus, and they do that because they've moved over to the business owner side of things. And so now we're going to move from the top left of the E, employee, from the bottom left of S, or the self-employed, to the top right, and talk about the B, the business owner, which is where you currently are, right?
So right now, I would say I'm in the business owner mode.
And what is that? How to define that for us?
So I think as you kind of defined it, the business owner mode is when you set up a business that is run, that's comprised of systems and teams that produce revenue without your direct labor.
Of you.
Independent of me.
Yeah.
If I don't show up, I'm actually not going to be gone next week, but we're going to have plenty of deposits coming in the door next week because it doesn't depend on me. Everything is still going to run whether I'm here or not because it doesn't depend on me because I've set up teams, I've set up systems and processes. We have a marketing system, we have a finance system, we have an intake system, we have operations systems, we have a cash flow system. All of this runs independently from me, which allows me the ability to take off next week and then the week after that, and then God knows where I'm going to be going in September.
And I think that's Kiyosaki's main principle. If I had to, that's his thesis, that true wealth isn't really measured in dollars. It's actually measured in time. So, one of the things, I can't tell you where you've been. You've been gone more than you've been here, which is great. And I'm not saying that, sure, it's nice when you're here, but
Which is why we're doing 12 podcast episode recordings back to back to back to back to back, so Mark can go take a vacation.
no comment, sir. But I do think that is really the crux of what we're talking about today, that true wealth is measured in time, not dollars. Regardless of what your bank account says, you have the time and the flexibility and the ability to go and take time off to be with your daughter who just graduated, and Tina and everybody, but you have the time to do that, while also having a business that sustains that lifestyle.
Yeah. I think what the book says is like a true well-run business builds wealth over time using other people's time.
Yeah, my time.
Yeah, your time.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, I am a cog in your wheel, on the Marc Whitehead wheel. I think that one of the things,
a well-compensated cog in my wheel, I would add. So.
Well, I was going to go that, one of the things that Kiyosaki says is that you're supposed to surround yourself with smart people as a business owner. So,
Always pay good. Pay good money. Pay more than market to get good people.
I was just saying you surround yourself with smart people.
Smart people, yes.
But also you've delegated a lot. You have put a lot of trust in me. And I think that that's one of the things that allows you to have that lifestyle that works for you, because it's not like you're, in the middle of the ocean saying, hey, Diana, what is the QuickBooks balance today? What did you do about this? I of all my top 5 priorities right now and fires that I'm dealing with, I bet you don't remember any of them, but much less remember to ask me the status of any of them. So delegate effectively, find people, smart people that you can trust to run your systems when you're out, so that you can have that lifestyle as a business owner, and then pay them well, according to Marc.
So the litmus test, according to Kiyosaki, is can you leave your business for a year and return to a growing firm? Can I?
I don't know. Let's litmus test that one.
Yeah. Now that's
yeah. Now you're getting uncomfortable.
That's a bridge too far, because quite frankly, that would drive me nuts.
I can't imagine.
When I leave and I'm gone for a couple of weeks, I love my wife. I love my family.
No, I hope Tina doesn't listen to this.
She knows this. I've told her this. I am antsy to get back.
Oh, I know. You actually become more of a micromanager towards the end of your time away. You're like, I want information. I'm like, what information do you need, sir?
And there's nothing wrong with that. That's probably one of the secrets to my success, is I like being here. I like doing what I do. I like building the business. I like being around my people. So
I think next we're going to move to the I quadrant.
This is the one I'm exploring, and I'm still, like I said, this has so many legs to it that you could go in any direction, from the opening up an Irish bar to getting an Arizona ABS, or God knows what you could do with this.
So see, I thought about this when I was prepping for this. And so guys, listeners, we're going to, for all the listeners out there and not the watchers, we started out in the top left with our E quadrant and our employee, and then we went to the bottom left for our self-employed lawyers, and then went to the top right with our business owners for our B, and then now we're in the bottom right in the I investor category. And Kiyosaki argues that true wealth is on that far right side of the quadrant, which is the B and the I. And when I was thinking about this and going back and reading the books and the materials to prep for this podcast, I immediately thought about your investment in other mass torts, because I don't know what you call it. I know what Litify calls it, but talk to us about not the cases that we have in-house.
Right. So I guess the basic concept of, the investor model is you use money to make money, okay, as opposed to
independent of your time.
So one of the things that we do here, one of the things that I do is I invest money into different mass tort litigations, which are independent of our law firm. So let's say, for example, let me find a good example. The Roundup litigation. Mm-hmm. Okay, this is where Monsanto is being sued for basically causing different diseases or A to Z's. I can't remember exactly what the gist of it is. That's the great thing. I don't have to know the details
Because we're not doing the case
because we're not doing the work.
We're not doing the client management. What did you do?
So basically, I just put up money. And that money was used to fund a marketing campaign, which then developed clients for other law firms. And these other law firms are working the case. I have no involvement. I have nothing to do with the case. The limited exposure that I have to it is that our law firm's name is on the contract jointly with these other law firms that we're working with. We have to follow the bar rules. We're, mutually liable and blah, 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 blah. But all of that can be taken care of through insurance. It's not like I lose any sleep over it. So I don't do a thing. I simply invest in other law firms. I invest in other litigations. And hopefully the way it works out is over time, those cases will resolve favorably and I will get paid the percentage that I negotiated with that law firm. So basically, they're paying me a percentage for the use of my investment money.
And that's what I thought of as it's just dipping your toe in the I category as a lawyer is mass torts.
That is one way to do it. It doesn't have to be in the legal industry, but we're just trying to give some legal industry examples here. There's lots of litigations that you can invest in because, the lawyers who are handling these cases need access to capital. And there's different ways that they can get access to capital. They can go to a bank and borrow money the traditional way, but that's hard to do because banks are not really into loaning money on litigation. They don't have the collateral.
To understand.
They don't understand it. They don't know how to collateralize it. It's very difficult for them. Now,
very long cycle too.
Some are starting to do it.
Yep.
I will give a shout out to Esquire Bank. Esquire Bank has dipped their toe into that. Then there are litigation funding groups, which I think are primarily funded by private equity, but they charge a tremendous amount. And sometimes they are what's called recourse loans. Sometimes they're non-recourse loans. It just depends on the setup. But, for cases that can drag 6-7 years into it, you can eat up all of your legal fees just in the interest expense. So that's an extremely expensive way to borrow money. So the other way is simply to get co-investors, to get other law firms, get other lawyers to invest in their litigations. And they pay us a percentage. It's a pretty simple business model from our perspective. Obviously, you better be in a litigation that you believe in, and you better be with some law firms that you trust.
Yep. And I think where you were going with this before I led you down the mass torts road was, some of our added cousins have Craig has 8-9 businesses.
I think Craig invents a new business every damn month.
Every quarter we talk
He just invested in a professional soccer team. I'm like, Good God, that just sounds like a big money pit.
He is a
all I know about
entrepreneur.
soccer is Ted Lasso. I'm sorry, that's the extent of my knowledge of soccer.
But it was one of his major life goals or something.
Yeah,
I think that was his, right?
Yeah.
We have a few added cousins with a lot of different stories, but I think that was one of the things that he wanted to do. So he did it, but now he literally has 9 to maybe 12. I don't know how many businesses.
Right.
And that I think is maybe an eye to the, not extreme, but it's one way to go ahead and do that. You see an opportunity. And none of these businesses, other than the fact that he has lent money to them, he does not go in to each of these 8 businesses and provide his time. He may provide his expertise as a CEO, as a business owner, but he doesn't give his time to these businesses.
Right.
It's literally his investment, and then they produce a P&L for him, and that's how the money works for him.
And some of them are tangential to the legal industry, and some of them have nothing to do with the legal industry.
Like the soccer team.
Or the Irish bar or whatever that floats your boat. And I guess the point is that what Kiyosaki's arguing is that true wealth is built by making your money make money for you, as opposed to having your labor make money for you, or your time, or the risk you take in building a business. That's the ultimate end goal. And it can be as simple as, a lawyer buying a CD. I mean, it's the same concept. It's just a really low rate of return.
Yeah.
A very safe investment, but a very low rate of return, as opposed to the investment that I do in mass torts. I've been involved, I think now, if I'm counting, I've been involved in 5 mass torts that I've invested money in that fell flat. That big fat zero. Just nothing. Money gone. So it can happen. But when it hits, like the Roundup litigation hit quite nicely, so I sort of, when I do my investments in mass torts, I sort of aggregate it. It's not how much did I invest in this particular tort. It's how much did I invest across all the torts, and what was my return across all the torts that I've invested in.
And so I think in our next segment, Marc, we're going to kind of talk about how, your mindset changed and some of the things that you did to take you from quadrant to quadrant.
Yes, we are.
I'm Marc Whitehead, a lawyer, entrepreneur, and business coach. Thanks so much for tuning into the Successful Barrister podcast. We have a blast creating it, and I hope you find it helpful. If our chats have sparked your interest, I'd love to hear from you. Shoot me an email at marc@markwhitehead.com. That's Marc spelled with a C. And join the Successful Barrister newsletter. Even better, let's hop on a call. I'd love to chat about how we can collaborate, share ideas, or just catch up.
All right. So I think we're going to conclude with sort of the theme: lawyers need to shift their identity and systems to move right on the quadrant. So you drew this little picture. So explain to me what that. Yes, oh my God, you've been drawing this picture the whole time,
and making fun of me the whole time.
I know,
Marc.
and I want you to do it again because I'm not done making fun of you. All right, so you want to move to the right on the quadrant, which is if you really want to build wealth, if that's your goal. Now, if your goal is to maintain where you are and you're very happy with where you are, as either an employed person or a self-employed person, we're not saying that's wrong. Just understand from a wealth building standpoint, it's going to take longer and it's going to have less potential.
Well, and I think for most people, what resonates probably with them is that the S quadrant kind of sucks. Like it's too much, I think, for one person.
I would agree with that.
For one person to handle it, you just need to somehow transition over to the B, which is the right side of that quadrant.
Okay, again, we're using letters. Let's use the words.
The B is the business owner, a side of the quadrant, which is that top right, because mainly the self-employed lawyer is just too much of a hard job to do on your own. So
I agree. So just kind of to recap, if you want to be an employee and you're happy with that, and most people are, that's fantastic, and you can build wealth that way.
You should hope I want to be an employee.
Right. It just will probably take it. It's the slow and steady pace. It's like, it's the whole thing that you were taught by your grandparents. Put away 10% of your paycheck, save it, never touch it. Mm-hmm. That will build wealth. No doubt about it. Absolutely will build wealth. Today we have 401ks, which is a better deal. So max out your 401ks, and put aside maybe another 5% on top of that. And you will build wealth over time, but it will take time. I truly believe the worst of all worlds is the self-employed person.
Which I think is where maybe a lot of our listeners are. I don't know. Somebody tell me. But they're just accidental lawyers, accidental self-employed lawyers.
Accidentally self-employed people. And, I don't want to rain on people's parade too much, but there's just so much vulnerability. There's so much financial vulnerability in being a self-employed individual. It's not where Marc's risk tolerance wants to land.
Well, and I think that, what you really think, like the person that you're speaking of in one of our recent episodes, you think you're building this asset that you can either one day sell or one day leave, that's going to be something for your family one day. And you can't as a self-employed lawyer. I don't think that that's an asset that you're truly, if you think that you're leaving behind a quote unquote asset for your family, it's not. You need to shift over to the B, top right, B, business owner, if that's what you're thinking that you're going to do is leave behind something for your family. And
because the very definition of the business, it is self-sustainable without you.
Yep. And you can do that. I mean, we've talked about the systems, the technology. I mean, this whole podcast is about, building things that will allow you to be a successful business owner. But you have to start with mindset, which I think is just letting go. You got to let go of some things and find out which things you're willing to let go of, and find a person. I cannot emphasize that enough because I've seen it too often with a lot of our ADA cousins. They just have a strong right hand. It doesn't matter how big they are. They just have that team lead or someone, that they can trust. And once you find that person, letting go is a lot easier.
So Kiyosaki gives some phrases here. Said, starting with mindset, he goes, replace security in your vocabulary with freedom. And replace the phrase avoiding risk with learning to manage risk.
Because I do think that that's really what, self-employed lawyers are. You don't want to take on too much debt because you've got all these, these cash obligations every 2 weeks with maybe a growing business. But what you're really trying to get to is, okay, risk is okay. It's just how much am I willing to tolerate? And then your risk tolerance increases as you become a more successful business owner.
So a couple of other mindset shifts. Some of the core shift is shifting from control to leverage. I like that one. So when you're the self-employed person, you have total control because you're doing everything. You have control literally of everything. Versus once you build a business and start building the business, you give away control, but what you gain is leverage. You gain the ability to get more and more and more done, more and more profitable productivity done with less of your effort. That's called leverage.
I don't know. Leverage means debt to me, but I think I hear what you...
No. Okay, I get it. There's a different way. To me, leverage, I'm talking about leveraging other people's time.
Like a fulcrum.
Yes, fulcrum. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. See, I haven't, Mark, you've been away too long. I've impressed you twice in one podcast.
I know.
So I do think, that letting go, the control, that is where a lot of people just get stuck and stymied in the S because they cannot let go.
So the problem with control, it feels safe, but it limits your ability to scale. And if you really want to build a business, you have to be able to scale, which means you have to let go of some of the control. A lot of people think leverage, it feels risky, but really what it does is it builds you freedom. I have a tremendous amount of freedom because I have a tremendous amount of leverage through my people. I can leverage my people's time to do the tasks that otherwise I would have to do, which gives me the freedom to do whatever I want to do. Like I'm going to get on a cruise ship this weekend and just go float around the ocean and hope the boat doesn't sink. And we're going to watch an episode of Titanic from the deck.
Oh my goodness, by Mark. But also, I think, it sounds so great when Mark says it. Just, give it up and you're going to have the ability to go get on a cruise ship and your business is going to be making just as money as if you were there. But realistically, we did not get here overnight.
Oh, no.
Listeners, as you guys know,
33 years it's taken.
But it's also, this is a 4.5-year relationship. He did not take a week-long cruise my first month. It was COVID. But also, even in the 6 months, even if you were able to, you would not have given me as much freedom to do what you do now. Even now, I have what I call a delegation of authority. I can only spend so much money before I have to make sure Mark approves it. So make sure when we say let go of the reins, we're not talking about everything. Let go of some control, but maintain control of the things that really matter.
So one of my favorite quotes from Kiyosaki goes, "The wealthy don't work for money. They build systems that print it." And flippantly, I say frequently that my law firm is a money printing machine. Now, what I mean by that, I don't mean that in an arrogant way, but what I mean is it will produce income regardless of what I do today, tomorrow, the next day, next week, next month. Now, it may matter what I do next quarter, next year, next 5 years, but I have a certain amount of runway that I can play with before it requires me in my intervention. And that's because, number one, I've hired great people like you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. But it's also because I control the risk. I'm willing to take risk, but I control the risk. I limit my downside at any one point, and there's lots of ways to limit downside if you think about it. So I think that's what I've always encouraged, especially young lawyers, is like when you get ready to make that leap, make the leap, but make it smart.
That's a great closing thought, Mark.
Okay, and we're getting the high sign that we are out of time. So we will leave on, I like this one. Your boss can't make you rich. That's your job. There's a lot of good quotes in this book. You like that one?
You better hope I don't like it too much, Mark.
All right, fine. We're out of here. So thanks for listening to the Successful Barrister podcast, where legal legends are made. I'm Mark.
And I'm Diana.
And together we're the dynamic duo of law. So remember to rate and review us. And if you enjoyed this podcast, tell your friends, spread the word. And visit us at successfulbarrister.com. And be sure to visit our sponsor, Marc, Whitehead & Associates, a national disability law firm, at disabilitydenials.com. See ya.
Bye, Mark.